Hello, everybody. If we haven't met before, I'm Drew McClellan from Agency Management Institute. Glad to have you join us. Today, I'm going to be handing over the reins to Megan and Susan, who are going to be taking us through some work they've done together and that they continue to do. And they're going to talk to us a little bit about first-party data and research. And I think it's good brain candy for as we go into the holiday, things to think about as we launch into 2025. So I'll be watching the chat. So if you have questions, if you would put them in there, I'm going to hit the mute all again for those of you that are popping in, but feel free to put your questions in the chat. So let me just anticipate a few of them before we get started. Yes, I am recording this. Yes, we will share the replay. It is probably going to take me a week or so to get it done with the holidays. So be patient. We will announce the replay link in the newsletter and also in the Facebook group. If you don't have access to either or both of those, it would be a lovely idea for you to get access to either or both of those. And we can talk about how to do that at the end. Feel free to ask questions as we go. If it's a good place to interrupt, I will interrupt. Otherwise, we'll have Q&A time at the end as well. So, all right. All right, with that, Megan, I am going to let you share your screen and take over.
So I thought maybe we'd take a couple of minutes up front here to introduce Susan and myself.
Yes.
I just so you know, I'm a 25-year agency owner. I'm kind of a data geek. Most of my career has been involved with data in one way or another, including a stint at FICO. So I am a big believer in helping other agencies understand the value of data and how it can be used. You know, we're always looking for another edge or another way to contribute. So Susan and I had this discussion a couple of months ago now, and decided that it would be just a helpful thing to go through what different kinds of first party data look like and how they can be used. Susan?
Hey, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Susan Beyer. My research agency is called Audience Audit, and we've been around for a while. Drew and I have been doing the Agency Edge together for, I think, 11 years now, Drew. So if you've seen that research,
Yep.
that's some of the stuff that we do. And, we work with agencies like Megan's. But one of the other things, in fact, this was my roundtable topic at the Build a Better Agency Summit last year, was this question of first-party data, because it's so critical in making sure you have an audience that you can reach regardless of what happens to the platforms around us. You look at TikTok and, all of these things, and it could just evaporate in a minute. And Megan and I feel very strongly about the importance of doing that. We know that clients want to do that, and we know that a lot of agencies aren't really doing it very well for themselves or thinking about how to do that. So that's sort of what came out of the discussion and led to this webinar, is how can we help y'all think about ways to start building a real first-party database of ideal prospects for your agency that isn't reliant on another platform or sitting in a bowl that you don't control.
Right. Yes. Okay, with that, just want to do a quick introduction. I think you did a pretty good job, Susan, so thank you for that. This is about upping your data game. Why is first-party data important, essential for business today? How to apply some of the learnings to business strategies, marketing. We'll show you some different types of data and how it's been being used to apply that learning, and then understanding examples of some research that we've done. So, and at the end of this, each participant will receive a copy of AMI's 2024 Agency Edge research, and also a copy of the custom audience profile that Cat and Tonic did on the 3 audiences that the Agency Edge research identified. So we got deeper into those audiences, looking for insights, understanding what makes them tick a little bit more. And I think it could be something that you can use tomorrow to start adding value. So first of all, the types of data and how they differ. Having been in data my whole life, uh, my whole life, well, maybe my career. I've worked a lot with third-party data, and that's aggregated data collected by third party, often sold to you as a list, or it can be used to augment your own data as well with information. But it's generally not first-party data. It's usually purchased from collected and aggregated from public sources. So first-party data is different than that. And this is something that you collect, you own, or you use specialized platforms that can give you access to data like that. So this would be like Susan's purview, surveys, assessments, website data, focus groups or interviews. I don't know if you have other examples.
Yeah, I think that we need to think about first party data. It's data that you can ask what you want, how you want it of the participants. So, if you're buying syndicated research reports or you're using research that someone else has created, you don't get to go in and tap into that audience and say, ooh, but what about this? Or I really wish, we'd ask this. It's out of your control. And first party data gives you complete control over who you're asking, what you're asking, and how you're asking it. And that's really how you can easily tell the difference between whether you have first party data or something else, which doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It's just different. So research, surveys, assessments you have on your website where people provide some information about how they're doing in their company and then give you their email list to get a report. Data from your own website. If you're doing qualitative research like focus groups or interviews, that's all first party data because you're collecting it yourself. And then the platform that Megan's going to talk to you about today is also first party data. And I think we need to take a moment to talk about why that's important in the scope of the kinds of things you're able to get from it, Megan.
Right. So we've worked with a couple of data platforms, and both of them have been really helpful. GWI is the one we work with right now. And these are platforms that actually perform surveys. So it's 2.5 global consumers are surveyed across 250,000 profiling points. So it's big, and they do survey refreshes. They follow trends. For instance, the pandemic. There was a lot of information around, how people felt, what their fears were, how they were interacting with brands, that sort of thing. So they go out to real people who answer the questions about a whole list of information, and then this platform allows for you to have a deep query. Like if you're trying to answer a specific question, you can really get deep with the queries. In terms of their beliefs, their affiliations, and thousands of other specifications.
Hold on, you guys. I just want to interrupt for a quick second. I'm sure many of you are already thinking this way, but I just want to plant the seed. Remember, all of this information you're thinking about today, you have to look at it from two lenses. One, how can this serve you as an agency? And two, how can you as an agency use this to serve clients? So we've all read about the cookies going away and the importance of first party data and how we have to help clients do that. So I want you to make sure that you're applying mentally both lenses as you're listening to Megan and Susan talk, because this isn't just for you and your own agency growth focus, nor is it just for you with your client work. I think you can and should be using this intelligence for both. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
No, that's a great point, Drew. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think the thing, and you're going to see what Megan's talking about, you guys. She showed it to me, and that's sort of when we started having these conversations. The thing I think it's really interesting to know about GWI and what they're doing is there are a lot of ways out there for you to get data that is actually manufactured data. It's actually synthesized from a lot of other things that don't actually involve people telling you something, right? This is not that. This is also not a situation like my panel providers where I say, hey, we need to get a group of Americans who vote between 18 and 65 years old, and they need to be geographically distributed. And the panel says, great, we can access those people and serve them up the survey you've built and ask them that. What GWI is doing is creating a massive database of constantly updated information about a huge range of topics that runs all the time. These surveys are running all the time with people. So they're not customizing it to what you want to ask. They're asking an extraordinary amount of information. And because AI allows us to analyze data and find data much more efficiently, inexpensively, more quickly than we could do before AI, it presents the opportunity for GWI to go in and say, oh, you have a question about this thing? We have so many people answering so many questions around the world that we can give you actual data that people, human beings, have provided to you that will inform the question that you are asking and give you an answer. Is that a fair representation, Megan, of sort of how this differs from some of the other things people may be familiar with?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and as you said, there's so much information. We'll dig a little deeper into how you go about it, but you want to start with a query, something you're curious about. And, I call it curiosity at scale because you can really get into a lot of different topics, including business, including, what brands are popular, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. And the reason Megan and I are doing this together, you may be wondering, like, well, wow, isn't this a competitive thing to each other? And it really isn't. There's things that each can do that the other cannot. So the opportunity Megan and I wanted to talk to you all about is where each of these opportunities fits for you, either for your agency or for your client, in terms of getting information that is informing specific things. Because both of them have gaps with what I do, with what this can do, but the combination of them together is pretty powerful, which is why
It's really powerful.
it's why we picked the agency edge, which many of you are probably familiar with, to do this process on and say, all right, well, if we've got that kind of information from survey research, then what does GWI give us that we didn't have before?
So question for you
Exactly.
guys, can GWI and or Resonate be used for B2B as well as B2C?
Yes.
Yep.
And really the example you're using today is a B2B
B2B.
example. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And then, second party data is a term you may have heard, but that's really a collaboration like with Susan. And so you would go to Susan and say, I want to, test this theory, or I want to do a custom survey of, the industry or an audience or, whatever it is. I'm sure Susan has better examples for that, but
no, you're not collecting it yourself, but you're involved with whoever is collecting it in some sort of arrangement, some sort of partnership where you get access to it or whatever. As opposed to a third-party situation where you're just buying somebody else's data that they've collected. Right. And that can be everything from syndicated research reports to an actual data set that someone has gone out and collected on how people feel about life insurance, and you get access to that data set to do your own analysis for.
Mm-hmm.
Those are both third-party examples.
And then a lot of people are curious about how AI or ChatGPT fits into this. And that is, those are great tools for research, but they don't do research in the same way. They're researching what's already available out in the internet. Everybody has access to the same information. So by using first party data, it's much more proprietary and useful specifically to you. So why does it matter? Well, self-reported information from real people is just more accurate in terms of getting down to internal motivators. Uh, as Susan said, the first party data is yours. It's not reliant on Facebook or another platform like you're talking about TikTok maybe going away. You have it. You have it in your CRM. It allows you to have a deeper understanding of really accurate self-reported information. The only thing that I will say about that is we did find over the years that people lie about two things: their age and their income.
Only two?
Yeah,
And if they recycle.
yeah, and if they were recycling, it's all guilt-ridden, right?
Everybody recycles.
And there are things you can do to get better and more accurate answers in survey research, like making it anonymous, so they don't have to feel like you can track them down and ask them why you're buying sex toys or whatever it is. But, you know, there's bias everywhere. It's just the closer you can get to the source, the better your data is going to be.
Right. So, you can get deeper information, more reliable information. And what I really love is that you can use this then in creating your strategies, your business strategy, your marketing strategy, because now you are looking at what is actually relevant. And there are insights that you can't get from other sources. So, especially in thinking about finding that right fit client for your agency or for the brands that you serve, this is a really, really valuable uh, tactic tool.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are working with clients who are operating in a specific geography or have a particular niche, and there isn't research out there around what they're doing, who they're serving, that matches very closely to what's really relevant,
Right.
for them. Why would anybody do that, research? So it gives you an opportunity to get something that's really going to answer the questions you need answered by the people you need to answer them.
Right.
Yep.
And this is something that maybe is underreported, but you can get more accurate targeting for digital marketing. You get to define your own audience and then put that out there at scale. So I like to think of, or we like to think of, data as creating an ambiance for your business, let's say. So, it brings you relevance, alignment, engagement, differentiation. There are all of these things that if you use first party data in the right way, you can really get way more honed in on the strategies, both for yourself and your clients.
I think it has a remarkable capacity to tell you what you should be doing and what you should stop doing. It's just valuable for understanding what you don't need to spend on anymore because it's not working or it's not hitting the right people or they don't go there for that kind of information, as well as it is for saying, hey, you need to be trying this. Your people are on YouTube. You need to be doing something, that way. So you're learning from both sides of the coin, which is really, really valuable. I mean,
absolutely. And
you're
I think
asking data fans, but
yeah. And I think, we've all been in a place where we've made some assumption about something and we find out that it's just not true. So, that it's, if you can validate things with first party data, that's extremely helpful.
you get pretty humble when you're a researcher because you find out stuff all the time that you're completely wrong about.
Yeah. I had an interesting one years ago when I worked at a previous company, and they were trying to identify. Well, the it was a Playboy magazine group, and they believed deeply that the people who bought Playboy were high-end cognac drinking, really like high roller kinds of guys. And so we did this research and found out that that was not true at
That's not
all.
true at all.
It
Yeah.
was not true at all.
Yeah.
And they got very upset and did not use the research
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I worked with Gap when they bought Athleta and came in to present research results, and a woman cried in the meeting because we had found out that a huge part of that audience just likes the clothes because they're very comfortable and easy to do everything from dropping your kid off at school to going to your yoga class to hitting the grocery store. They weren't necessarily athletes. And she was crying because she felt like those were her people and they were going to get left behind now that Gap was taking it over and it was all going to be athletes, athletes, athletes. So, and poor
Wow.
lady was
Yeah.
just like, oh, I thought I was gonna. So anyway, we all learned something.
Excellent. Excellent. Um, all right. So also, connection, helping your clients deeply understand their industry, customers, clients. Susan, you mentioned this. I mean, every time we tell a client of ours something that they didn't understand before, they feel heard, they feel seen, and and then one of the things that I think is less talked about is creating synergies for internal communications, culture, values development. There's a lot of great information that defines what people care about and how they care about them or how they envision themselves, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what do they believe about themselves and want others to believe? What are their pet projects that they support? What are their views on finances, which is such an emotional subject, and first party data can get to some of those emotions and insights. And then, how do they spend time online and what apps are they using? So, and then finally, the whole engagement thing. All agencies in the room want to create more engagement, whether it's for their customers' brands and their customers, or it's for their own lead gen situations. That's an important part that we all look for.
For sure. And I think aside from the value of using it in your work and to engage in your business development efforts and stuff like that, whether you're working with a client or whether you're building thought leadership, having this kind of data that is yours is a clear differentiator versus other folks talking about the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge credibility boost. It's a huge trust builder that you've invested in going out and getting information about something that's relevant to the people that you're trying to sell to. So, I mean, the list goes on and on. There's real
I
value
agree.
having this kind of stuff in-house for sure.
Yes, yes. And then I touched on this earlier, but audience activation on ad platforms is an important value of at least the GWI kinds of data, first party data. You can get some really accurate targeting. You can define and refine your audience and then build that audience in the platform, push it to Dynata and this is GWI's process, but they do audience modeling for activation on a ad network. And then you can expand the segment if you need to, and then push the model out to any kind of audience activation platform, ad platform of your choice. So it really does help. You're not only understanding them better, but you're also targeting them better.
Yeah. Yeah, some of this is about the limitations of what you can do in a survey.
Right.
There's just, you can only get so granular on what people are really doing when it comes to a specific platform and a specific, targeting approach and stuff like that. I mean, I know there are people in this room who've taken one of my surveys that's like, that's already too long. I can't even imagine having to answer another 45 minutes worth of questions about my social media activities. So this lets you get more granular without pissing everyone off that you're trying.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's an excellent point.
Someone's asking if you can go a little deeper on the idea of audience modeling.
Okay, so audience modeling is really taking the characteristics of that audience that are they're going to rise to the top in terms of being important in different. Let me back up. So audience modeling is really all about creating the ideal audience for your business. So if you're looking at the trying to get more right fit clients, you sit down, you create your audience and in the platform, and then when it goes to the modeling part of it, they create a like audience that then can be used in a broader way. So they'll be looking for different audience members on the ad networks that have the characteristics of the audience in your platform. So modeling really is taking that smaller segment that you've created and making it larger and more effective on a larger network.
Finding more people like that. So I think a lot of audience modeling is about attaching additional information you don't have based on the information you do have, and then finding more people who match that profile. So that you can identify your ideal prospects and not only demographic or firm information about them and their business role and all of that kind of stuff, then you can add information from these massive databases around what people like that are doing in terms of their activity on various ad platforms and what interests them and the kinds of topics that they have. And all that gets folded into what is a really robust audience profile beyond what you would probably be able to do yourself, that can then actually just it's plug and play. And all of a sudden you're reaching tens of thousands of people like that instead of the 500 that you knew about.
Right. And because you get to choose the ad platform, you get to work with the media group that you want to. So that's an important part of this as well. You're not pushed into any particular ad choice, platform choice, media choice. Did that answer the question?
Oh. Just heads up, you guys are at the halfway mark. You're 2:30 my time.
Okay. So Susan, I'm going to let you take this one.
Yeah, so if you haven't already seen the Agency Edge, it's survey research, it's online survey research, it's quantitative data. But one of the things that we're doing in it is understanding the mindsets that exist in an audience. So for example, in the 2024 data, we found people who felt very strongly positive about agency relationships and saw them as very ingrained in their whole business strategy, not just their marketing. We found folks who really use agencies because they have to, but they're not super connected to them emotionally or tied in, and they think there's value in switching them out just to get fresh ideas and stuff. And then there are folks who have a lot of expertise as clients and want agencies who can match them in terms of expertise and become a partner that's really providing higher level information and listening to the client's team about what they've learned about their clients and prospects. So we know a lot about each of these three groups based on those sort of attitudinal mindsets that they have. That isn't something that's going to show up on paper, And when we look at demographics, a lot of times there aren't big differences in client size or their budget or any of those kinds of things, but it gives you the opportunity to see that. So if you haven't seen that, there's a link to see it. But just as a little bit of background, that's the study that we're using to input the audience profiles for Megan's process to see what we can get out of that beyond what we were able to capture in the survey due to the limitations of people's time and interest in participating in stuff like this.
Sounds good.
Assessments are a very similar thing. It's another online, it's basically an online survey that you have on your website. So you can do this, capturing your own information on your own website with something that people fill out that tells them how they're doing on things and provides them feedback from you that's coded into the system. So it's just another way to build this first-party database and get some insight into what people are struggling with, what their organization looks like, what their goals are, those kinds of things.
Okay, so we took the agency advocates, the begrudging buyers, and the exacting experts, the three audience levels or that rose to the top in Susan's research, and we thought this was an interesting perspective because we were asking them to list their initiatives for the next 5 years. All three audience segments are significantly more likely than the baseline to choose AI adoption and implementation.
Not surprising because they're marketers on the client side. Yep.
But really only 16% of agency advocates and exacting experts and 26% of begrudging buyers fell into this bucket. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to have varied conversations with our clients and with these different audiences around. Yes, of course, we have to address AI and all of that, but there's also a lot of room for other conversations. And then here's another example we thought was interesting. When you think about semi-unskilled manual laborers and what kind of education they might have, you might think, high school or maybe even high school dropout and we found it really interesting that when they were looking for people who had interest in the vocational school, most of these people had 78.5% of this audience had post-secondary education, vocational, undergrad, graduate, even almost 15% have a master's or PhD. So this is one of those things where you might make an assumption about an audience and not really be right on, and you run the risk of talking down to them or getting your messaging off. So this is a really interesting mindset that can help you refine that messaging or even your business strategy if you're in that space. And then we work in the financial industry, and we were looking at female financial advisors versus male financial advisors, and found it really interesting that female financial advisors are way more likely to describe themselves as social and outgoing and adventuresome or venturous as than the men in the same position. They both see themselves as risk takers, but you would have to have very different messaging or very different approaches to men and women in the same job in the same situation.
Yep. I think time-wise, let's move through this pretty quickly because I want
Okay.
you guys to show people the CAP example. So this is the type of report that if you were coming in with the kind of information we have out of the Agency Edge study in terms of profiles, this is the kind of output you can get from the thing Megan's talking about in terms of more insight that's tactically and strategically helpful for you or for your clients, depending on what you're using it for. So that link there will let you see that, and it's pretty impressive. And the thing I want you to know is it's coming from real people. It's not synthetic. It's not manufactured. It's coming from a massive initiative to collect information on an ongoing basis from real human beings about a huge range of things. So I think it's data you can trust. It's not generated by a bot. And Dynate is a highly respected organization for what they do. So I just think that it's worth taking a look at because whether you have profiles coming from research or from something else you've already done, you can use this. Sorry, Drew.
Well, I was going to say, they have to come from research. It may just be, so for example, we did one of these based on agency owners, based on what we know about agency owners.
Yep.
So I don't want people to think you have to have done a research project or have some other source of data to start this. While that's great, if you have that, you also can just yours or your
Go with what
clients'
you know.
understanding of who they already served, move to a deeper bit of information.
Yeah. And in most cases, I completely lost my train of thought. Sorry. I was too busy listening.
No worries.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Drew. I appreciate it. This is a very helpful report. The clients that we have who use something similar to this are looking for data that they can give their CMOs to really dig deeply into the client brand and specific information around what is needed in order to bolster the brand or change messaging, etc.
Yep. So let's talk about some of the how you actually use this stuff. So whether you're getting stuff from a survey or stuff from a platform, there's some of this stuff that's more relevant, appropriate for each of them. But validating strategies or assumptions or learning that they're not accurate is super helpful in crafting marketing strategy. Define, refine, and model your audiences so that you can go to digital confidently, knowing that you're showing up where these people are actually looking for help. We've talked about thought leadership a lot, so using key insights to do that, whether it's an ad creative or something like that, to talk about something that's really surprising and innovative for them. See where people are going for information and resources about what you're trying to help them with. Super important, so your stuff's in the right place. And getting creative that is really going to impact them, which often is a function not of how old they are or how much money they make. It's how they think about something,
Right.
as to getting that hook work effectively.
Right.
I'm curious
So,
how you guys would recommend talking to clients about this. How do you get clients interested in doing this, seeing the value of this, being hungry for this sort of insight and data?
I mean, I think any client that is spending money on digital advertising in particular, which can eat a lot of budget pretty quickly, has got to be interested in anything that could help them be more effective and efficient with it, save money where they don't need to spend it, and focus their funding where they do need to,
yeah,
have more impact.
a lot of times we end up with a smaller budget that it needs to do a lot. And by doing a little more research up front, we can get better response rates on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So some, client to agency benefits, business alignment, understanding and sharing values, making sure that the motivation, the motivators that are being talked about are building brand loyalty and ambassadors. And then, thought leadership, and we talked about increased engagement.
Yep. I think for a lot of people, this is new, going in and getting first party data. They're not really doing it. So there's some things you want to think about, and hopefully you have somebody that you can talk to who knows more about this than you do. Megan and I are always happy to have these conversations with folks because we're data nerds. But
absolutely,
it's very helpful with first party data to, instead of going out and building a survey off the bat, or buying a structured audience, what do you want to know and why? What are you going to do with that information? Because that's going to really tighten up sort of what you're thinking about. If you do a little strategy at the front, look at where you can already collect data and where you may be collecting data and you're not even looking at it. I mean, we've had great results with folks who had something up and had 30,000 responses to it and never did anything with them. So it was just a function of sort of looking at what you already have. Very helpful to think strategically about the potential bias that's coming in on your data sources. I had a client who was like, okay, well, we're going to survey, we want to know opinions of the brand, and we want to survey an email database, but the only one we have is our warranty database. So we're going to survey them. I'm like, what do you think people who have accessed your warranty program are going to say about your brand compared to people who haven't? Like, it's just, you got to think about that kind of stuff. And be aware. If you can do custom research to clarify your niche and understand it better, that's great. Whoever you're working with on any of this kind of stuff with data, the platform, a researcher, you want to make sure that you're getting statistically valid samples and that the data is clean. There's a lot of bot activity with data these days, poor quality responses from people just racing through stuff. So you want to be working with somebody who knows that data needs to be cleaned before you start analyzing it and looking at it. And this is Megan's ad, don't test too many things at once or you can't tell what's working. Or what isn't working.
Okay. Let's test it all.
Let's test it all. All right, let's go to the next slide real quick here. So from a custom research, this is pretty straightforward, and any researcher is going to talk to you about these things. Understand what you want to understand, find the audience based on those characteristics. Take a good look at whether the things we often assume characterize people and make them different from others are actually doing that. A lot of the research Drew and I do, we see no difference in client size or budget or whatever. And those are very common defaults to go to and say, oh, we only want to work with big companies or companies with budgets over $1 million. And that may be really not leading you into a place that's getting you the prospects that you want. And always, always, always work to find out where the people you are trying to reach are looking for help around the topic that you are addressing, because that is where you need to be showing up, and that's where you can save a lot of your spend, I think, in terms of ads and other activity by just focusing on where those folks are. We do, we'll ask people what social media platforms you use, and then we'll ask them, okay, which ones do you use for this? Which ones are most helpful with this? And there's a huge difference between people who say, I'm on LinkedIn all day, but I don't use that for parenting advice. For that, I go to YouTube or something like that. So just, really know where people are getting help around the topic that you're getting. Those are, whatever you're doing in terms of custom research, you want to pay attention to that.
Okay. And then, we talked about taking your agency or your clients to the next level with deeper understanding of what matters. The things that people about, the places that they go, the things they support, finding that blue ocean niche. I mean, what agency wouldn't love to trip into a segment that is less filled with other agencies trying to, win the day? So that works for either the agency or the client, right? Finding that specific area that isn't just crowded. And then creating compelling content. This is thought leadership. This is connecting with your audience. This is, social media stuff, all of them that will attract them into your sales funnel. That's ideal. And then along with that, creating connections and loyalty that extend the client and agency relationship. beyond that 2.5 years. I looked this up and it broke my heart that that's the average. I think the average is higher for AMI agencies. I would guess so. And then activate your audiences with a higher confidence level that it's going to be a great ROI. You know, we are above benchmarks with all of the work that we do, where we're activating off of an audience. So those are big takeaways for us. Are
All
there any
right,
other
questions?
questions?
I'm still watching the chat, so if anybody has questions, fire away.
Anyone?
I'm curious how you think you might apply this, either for yourself or for a client. You can also just unmute. You can probably stop sharing, Megan, so we can see each other.
Yeah, that would be good. There we go. Am I still sharing?
You are.
You're still sharing.
What do you use to augment your first party data? Is the question in that chat, guys.
What do you mean by augment? Are you still there, Josh? Could you unmute?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hello. So, one of the main verticals we work in, our clients have a ton of information about their guests. So what platforms have you guys used to enrich that data? So let's say they just have name, address, date of birth, and maybe the customer's worth to them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What platforms have you found that's most effective for augmenting that?
Well, it kind of depends on what you're looking for in terms of effective. I mean, there are things like cycle data and stuff like that where they've basically already gone out and identified all of us based on where we live, the communities that we live in, into very, very tight geographies. And, this is where we get sort of predetermined segments that are like flustered moms or, whatever. But it's based on real research. And then you can go in and say, here's my email list. Tell me how my list maps with some of the data you already have. And there's lots of those types of platforms, and they offer different kinds of insights on them, but they can be very helpful in just sort of understanding, like, if you don't have household income data and you don't know whether your people are rural or whatever, because you're not shipping them products, there's a lot of information you can get out of that. I think the big challenge is understanding how people are thinking about things, because that's not data that's usually collected very easily. And that's where you may have to go do something specific to get what you want. But there's a lot of those sort of matching kind of databases that can really improve the robustness of what you're getting. The other thing I'll mention before Megan pops in here is, if you are in touch with people, again, first-party data, first-party context, one of the things you should always do is say, would you be willing to join our advisory council? And you will get a surprising percentage of people who agree to do that. And then you nurture that group. You reward them for being part of the group that's helping you do better and helping your clients. You ask them questions, and you start to build a more robust profile around that group. Because you have more opportunities to ask them questions than you would. And that can become very valuable for an agency to have for the benefit of clients and prospects, to say, hey, let me run that by our group of people who buy stuff like you sell.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, I was just curious. We use a couple data warehouses to enrich it, get more demographic information. I was just curious what platforms you guys have used.
Yeah, most of the stuff we're getting is coming right out of the surveys. For our stuff. But Megan, what do you like for enhancing a data set?
Well, similar answer to yours. I believe that there's a way to use GWI data. Beth, are you there? I see she's on, but
yeah,
maybe chime in. Is there a way to marry GWI data with like an internal
There is.
customer list?
It's a little bit more complicated. Resonate does that. Obviously, it gets very expensive, and you need pretty high audience counts to start with. But there are ways to take this, incredibly deep survey data and append it to your existing data set.
And I think almost any list provider that is a credible list provider can do that for you. And generally, you can find out, you can get some background on their lists to see how, what they specialize in. So you can hone in on what the best way to augment your data would be.
Yeah, the number one question I'd ask anyone now that you're looking at to sort of augment your list, it's going to provide you data. The number one question to ask them is, how did you get this information? How do you get this data? Because if they're signing up for a sweepstakes at a county fair, they may not be the people that you hope to hear from with respect to feedback. So just ask.
100%. 100% agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. You probably had that experience.
Okay, another question. If you are just starting to collect first party data, best practices on how to store it. Are there security risks or things we should watch out for?
Well, there certainly are security risks. Some of it's going to depend on the industry you're in. If you're asking people questions about healthcare, you need to be HIPAA compliant. Most of the survey platforms allow for you to be HIPAA compliant and guarantee that that's the case. Finance can be one of those things too. So I think the best thing to do is just do some Google searching on the requirements for different types of data in different industries, and then maybe find a specialist, a legal specialist or whatever, or security specialist who can really help you make sure that you're doing a good job with your data. Beth, Megan, do you have any other thoughts on that? Or
no, I totally agree with that. I also would say that, some of your data, you're going to want to make sure there isn't internet access to the server it's on. You want to be really mindful of the security levels that you're using when you're collecting it. But, we work a lot with financial services. So, they used to give us account numbers and customer information and all of that. So we had to really, be very, very careful.
Yeah.
My advice would be to assess what risk level you're comfortable with. Like, we don't accept, obviously, that kind of account data anymore. It's just not worth the risk insurance-wise. So we take anonymized data. You can run it through LiveRamp or something like that if you want to work with it.
Yep.
All right. Any favorite ChatGPT prompts that you use to get started in building an audience?
Ooh, I'm not going to answer that one, Megan. I'm not a ChatGPT expert, and it makes things up, so it frightens me.
We have an expert in the house. I don't know if she wants to speak.
I wouldn't use ChatGPT to start building an audience, I guess. That would be probably what I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's hard to know what you're going to get.
Is there an AI tool that you would use, or is it all flawed enough that it's not safe?
I mean,
it's not
I guess
reliable. Safe is probably not the right word, but reliable.
Yeah.
The only way I would use AI to do it is if they are working strictly with your own existing information and you want them to analyze it and pull out,
exactly,
properties or characteristics that are really common in your data set. But
so one of the things that's really great to do is, if you do have data from whatever source you have on the audience that you're interested in, you can create a custom GPT whose only information source is the data you provided. And that can be transcripts of conversations, all of that kind of stuff. And then you can, ask that Chat GPT, which is now sort of taken on. You could say, this is who you are. How would you feel if we did this? How do you think you would respond to this? Between these three things, which is more important? And from the data you've provided it, it can do a pretty good job of figuring out what what you've got to say about that.
Yeah.
And the more robust the data is the more robust the information will be coming out. ChatGPT and AI are great at analyzing massive amounts of data very, very quickly and synthesizing them and putting them together in a way that you can understand them. And you don't have to worry about you know what, I'm just going to come up with something and see if it's right on the part of ChatGPT, which is, to do. So.
Because it's so confident all the time.
Yeah. I like what Camille said about using AI to help her make her questions better.
Yes.
Bring her questions better for the audience she wants. That's a great use of ChatGPT. But I don't think you want to create an audience out of ChatGPT. And one of the reasons I really like this thing that Megan's talking about is, as I said, it's real people, real survey data handled by real responsible organizations. It's just allowing you to access a lot of information that's been gathered at scale and let AI run through it for you.
Right. And I would say, we're working on doing some training of ChatGPT. We're working on, if you have enough information, you can use it in some ways in a very limited, if you're limiting the scope.
Yeah.
But
that's this week. Who knows what'll happen next week, though?
Right.
Like I'll be out of job at some point. Hopefully I'll be past wanting to do my job when that happens, but we'll see.
Right.
Thank you, Drew, for allowing us
to talk
this topic. And I would encourage you, if anybody has questions, reach out to Megan on the platform stuff, reach out to me on research stuff, whether you're doing it through us or not, doesn't matter to me. But really, you've got to prioritize getting some first-party data that belongs to you, because things can change very quickly in our environment. And I would hate for you to lose your whole address book, your whole Rolodex in an afternoon without being able to replace it. And that can decimate a business. So however you start, even if you start small.
For those of you under 40, you can Google Rolodex and it'll.
I was at a conference with a guy who is his head salesperson lost their phone in the water in a lake, and it had all of their business development contacts on it, and he had to start over again. They were backed up nowhere, they were whatever. And this is what'll happen if all you depend on is cookies and they go away, or if you're building your whole business on TikTok and it goes away. So
do not build your business on rented land. Right.
No. Yeah.
For sure.
And there are dozens of CRMs that you can use to start building, or you can do custom databases. There's a lot of options from a technology standpoint.
Millions of ways to get it, millions of ways to hold it and analyze it and create output from it. So,
all right, Megan, Susan, and Beth with the assist. Thank you guys for
thanks for
joining us today and sharing. And again, I'll send out a link to everybody with the copy of this video, the deck, and some samples of the documents that Megan and Susan and Beth were talking about. So we'll try and get that to you. It's probably not going to be until after next week. So it'll probably be before the first of the year, but pretty close up against that. So
great. Have a great holiday, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. All right. Bye.